Hi there, welcome back to The Conservative. This is your host, Mike Lannon, and this is PEGTV, the government channel 21. And you can receive any of my previous viewings on PEGTV archives and just look for The Conservative, and they've got some of them stored there, and you can look back and see them. Believe it or not, I'm in my 13th year of doing these, pretty much 26 a year. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is a public access conservative talk show. It's all about opinion. And I always say you need to be discerning, meaning that you need to take and look up some of this stuff yourself. Don't be just a lockstep follower of the talking points of either the right, which would be the Republican side of politics generally speaking, and or the left, which would be the Democratic side of politics, generally speaking. And of course, far right is total anarchy. Far left is total government control, normally spoken of in this day and age as communism. And to the right, just as I've just said, total anarchy, no government at all. That would be to the far extremes. So most conservatives that I know would like to get us sort of to the conservative middle. Most strong Democrats would like to also get themselves to the social middle. Now, what's going on in America today is as far left as you can possibly go. Well, not quite so far left, but I mean, it's very left. All for one, one for all. That's the Communist Manifesto. That's the objection and objectivity object of the left right now, is to make sure that everything, they're promising everything to you. And they never come up with the answer about where the money is going to come to take care of all these free things, free health care, free housing, free education, free this and free that. It has to be paid for by somebody. And so the more that you give away free, the bigger the taxes have to come to pay for that. And taxation comes in two forms: corporate taxation and then individual taxation. And you all know by individual taxation, you see it each and every day. And we have to stop the stupidity. And I'll call it like I see it, and that is that we are right now being as stupid can get. We're falling for the line of the left, which is that the current president is everything but a good man. That's just not true. Anybody that wants to read history can see that this president, he may have faults. I don't know of any president in my lifetime that didn't have faults. Oh, gee, I'm sorry, but there are no people that are walking on this earth that are perfect. And I suspect that if I were to ask your spouse how perfect you were, I would get a very interesting answer. Or if I, vice versa, or if I ask your parents how perfect you were, or for your neighbor. We're all going to find out that we have faults. And so since November 9th, 2016, the President of the United States has been placed under a microscope to impeach him. As a matter of fact, since November 9th, 2016, almost 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago now, the President of the United States has been, they've clamored, the left has clamored for his removal from office, impeach him. They tried to get it through the Russian collusion Mueller report, where they found out that there was no collusion and there had been no obstruction. They tried to find that out and destroy the president with the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, and he stuck tight with that candidate for the Supreme Court of the United States. And they tried to destroy that man by using Zelensky's rules for destroying character assassination, which is basically what they're trying to do with Trump. They've tried everything that they can, and the more that the left throws at Mr. Trump, the more he fights back. He's a fighter, and the more you're going to find that the polls are going to continue to climb for him. And about 258 days from this broadcast, you're going to find out that this is a second-term president. It's going to happen because this country is not ready, and I don't know that it ever will be ready to accept the loss of its freedoms. We fought and have fought over the last 245 years violently fought for the rights to be a free people. And we're not about to give those rights up to anybody. So the First Amendment and the Second Amendment are the two biggest rights that people talk about, but there are another 13 rights that are in that Bill of Rights that we protect and will protect. We're not about to give them up for a bigger government. And most people will agree with that if they sit down and think for a few minutes and are reasonable with their thinking. And so those of us in Vermont who continually go down the path of socialism and continually go down the path of it's better to have everything given to us by the government are going to find out very, very shortly now that this government called Vermont can't afford it and is broke. And we're going to see that. We're going to find that there's more and more people leaving the state, looking for other places to live away from the Democratic Socialist Party, and they're going to move out of the state and they're going to earn their living somewhere else, and therefore the burden of tax payment is going to fall on those who remain, and the fastest growing population in the state of Vermont is 80-year-olds and above. They're not, in general, a income producing group of folks. Most of them are on fixed income, retired. Many of them on disability or are nearing the end of their life, and they're not going to be paying these exorbitant taxes in order to bail Vermont out of its tax situation. Just not going to happen. So Vermont's in deep, deep trouble. And it's interesting to note that California has a very rapid exiting population. They're leaving the state like in droves. That's another state that's run by the Democratic Socialist Party. And if you want to look at New York City, for instance, run by Bill de Blasio, who is a very strong Democratic Socialist, they're leaving New York City at approximately 300 people per day. I think the actual number is 287, but it rounded up to 300 people a day are leaving New York City for greener pastures. Well, 300 a day, you could do the math. That's well over 9,000 people a year. And Mr. de Blasio now has been in for, I think, 2 terms, or he's working on his second term. And terms of 4 years, I believe, down there. So that's a lot of people, folks. And New York City is a very high taxed city. New York State is a very high tax state. And they've got lots of problems over there because everybody is running around willy-nilly thinking that somehow or another the conservative view of government is the wrong view and that we ought to be giving away the store. And you notice right now that they had this tremendous uptick in bail reform in New York State. And the bail reform is a week old and it has failed miserably over there already. People are being let out of jail that can't make bail. And they've gone out and they've robbed. They've gone out and stabbed people. They've gone out and raped people. The very crimes that they were sitting in jail waiting for an adjudication and bail hearing. So they've been released and they've gone right out and done the crime again. So this is a major problem. Most people, when they have committed some kind of a crime, there's something going on with them mentally that allows them to even think about going out and doing it again. And the reason that we have bail in the first place was to prevent people from continually harassing society with whatever crime that they wanted to commit. So New York is failing there. They're failing in a lot of other places. Vermont's not much different. We have the new bill that's being passed where, and I have not read the bill, so I could be not on point with this comment, but the understanding in the community that I and the people that I hear from is that we are now about to try to pass the legalization of prostitution. Well, isn't that just great? You know, and so it's another way of the state probably, in all likelihood, trying to figure out a way to tax or what they call the sin taxes, which would be alcohol and drugs and sex and anything else that they get their hands on that people will partake in, and they'll tax that eventually if they control that industry. So I don't know how big or how rampant prostitution is in the state of Vermont. I do know that we have child trafficking in the state. We've had cases where children have been taken out of the state into New York City. I know we've had children that have been taken out of the state into Montreal. Don't know the particulars about it because I've never really spent a lot of time studying it, and I suspect that those of you that are listening to this show haven't either, and you might even be shocked to think that little old Vermont has such a crime even occurring. But there is no state free from any of those taxable crimes that the state would love to make legal so that they can place a tax on them and therefore get some money. So I suspect, because the state is talking about the allowing the occurrence of prostitution to occur legally, that they must feel that somebody's done some homework somewhere that says that there's some lucrative benefits to the state tax department for controlling that industry. Don't know. And I don't plan to study it. So, I mean, you can go out and study it. It's just not something, unless it gets egregious and it affects me, and it does affect all of us if indeed these kinds of events, these kinds of unpunished crimes go unchecked, go unviewed. They do affect us. It chips away at the moral block of a nation. And these are the very things that you have to be very, very careful about. It's okay, chip away. It's okay, chip away. Oh, it's okay, chip away. And so we keep saying that certain things that really basically are illegal or should be illegal, we keep saying that it's okay to have an apportionment of it, allow some of it. And so we chip away at the moral block, the fiber that holds a family and a community and a nation together is the moral fiber, the moral values that are passed down from generation to generation. And if we continue to chip away at those, we can expect to have absolutely nothing in the form of value structure in which to form our laws. And our laws, of course, you've heard me say many times, are based on the Judeo-Christian principles. And without those, we have to fall to the government. Well, the government would love to see the Judeo-Christian principles thrown out the window. They would love to be the God. They would love to be the person that decides what is best for you spiritually, what's best for you intellectually, and what's best for you physically. And if you think very, very carefully, they are trying to control those three parts of an equilateral triangle. They are trying to control the public square with the religious view. The Constitution doesn't say freedom from religion. It says the practice of freedom, of religious freedom. It doesn't say that the public square is supposed to be protected from it. It doesn't say that the intellectual counterpoint of the equilateral triangle, the left leg of that triangle, should not be controlled by the government. The best way to learn is to become a learner, learn how to learn, not have your head full of government propaganda, which is being taught now in most schools all over the country, especially in the college level, high school level, probably be dropped into the elementary school level in the form of tainted civics, tainted history, and therefore a change in our society, because everybody is now being told that socialism is the better way to go, with very few people being advised on what free enterprise is all about and about the government of the United States. I suspect if you were to check very carefully in the state of Vermont, there's very few civics classes being taught. I suspect there's very few government classes being taught. And I suspect there's very few early American history classes being taught. And if they are, I'll bet you dollars to donuts that there is a spin on that from the person who is doing the teaching. And I'll be willing to bet that it's a left-handed view, or meaning the democratic socialist look at the government, versus just a neutral look, which it should be. Teaching children how to learn so that they understand your government. That's the intellectual side of that equilateral triangle that I'm talking about. And the physical side, letting our children become as obese can be, allowing ourselves to become as obese can be, trying like crazy to now force that we as a society should be paying for all of the health issues that occur from smoking and drinking and the wrong use of drugs. That's really not part of what society should have to do for people that are making these kinds of choices. We shouldn't be picking this and having us pay unbelievable amounts of money to get people out of these healthcare problems and issues. They're not made by the person that is sitting to the right or to the left of them necessarily. If indeed everybody had, for instance, polio or had the ability to catch polio, that's a different issue. But when you've got people that are smoking and they know that smoking is wrong, you've got people that are abusing drugs and they know that it's wrong. Well, when do you know this? You know it at the start. You know at the start of drinking, drugging, vaping, using marijuana. Now there's all kinds of studies out there about marijuana and what it does to the human body. But nobody wants to listen to that. We're passing laws all over this nation. Colorado's in big trouble they were the first in the nation to pass legalization of marijuana. They've got all kinds of automobile accidents out there and all kinds of high-end, I guess you wouldn't call it DUI, driving under the influence. I guess you would call it DUI, but they've got all kinds of problems that are associated with marijuana. And everybody was told in the front end that this could be a very dangerous place to be, but no, we didn't want to listen to all that. And so we pushed the agenda forward and said, okay, we're going to make it legal. Well, so we've made it legal. Now, does that mean that because we've made it legal, now we owe everybody that plans to use marijuana as a supplement to their health benefits? No, I don't think we should do that. Why should I have to pay for that? Why should I have to pay for the person that's decided to drink booze? Why should I have to pay for the person that's now got a heavy-duty lung cancer due to smoking? I think there should be some lines drawn there. That's not to say that I'm not compassionate about it, but I have to stop and I have to think about what's a really good conservative view on such things. And we should not be paying for these kinds of health care issues. So that triangle is not balanced right now. We have a sliding, falling left leg, the intellectual leg, falling into an abyss. We have the health care issues falling into an abyss because people don't take care of themselves. It's quite frankly the truth, and you have to take a look at all that. We're going to have this. You can see in the literature, the research literature, that this is the first generation coming up now that will not live as long as their family members. And that's a very interesting statistic. I don't know how they come up with these stats, but someone is out there in the medical professions that is studying these kind of statistics and saying that this is the first generation coming up now that will not live as long as the generation that is currently alive. So that means we're doing something egregiously wrong and failing miserably in the health sector. So that's another leg of the triangle that's falling into the abyss. Now, when we talk about the base of this triangle, you've heard me say it 1.5 million times, and it comes right back around in the circle that I was just talking about, the Judeo-Christian values, the Judeo-Christian precepts that causes mankind to be balanced. And it goes as far back as you can possibly find in any of the ancient civilizations. These precepts were constantly talked about. Aristotle talked about them. Plato talked about them. Pythagoras talked about them. Jesus talked about them. We can come right down through the line and we can see that this triangle that we talk about has been around for, well, we've got written record as far back as I think 6,000 to 7,000 years old, and it's in the Sumerian civilization written record. So let's go at least far that back, that people have known how to balance. And we don't have that going on right now. And balance does not mean that it's a one-sided conversation either. Balance means you're hearing from all sides of a conversation. we shouldn't think that everybody down in Pennsylvania, when they were writing the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, were all like-minded. They were like-minded in one sense. They wanted to be free men and women. They wanted to be free, and therefore they spent a lot of time building a shared meaning, paying attention to the intention, making sure that they were able to balance their personal view with the views of others. And they were able to balance that. They were able to take and reflect carefully on their self-awareness so that they knew who they were in the room. And there were a lot of egos in those rooms back there in those days when the founding fathers put together the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. But they were gentlemen, and they knew how to get along to the degree that they could formulate a government that was going to be run by men under the grace of God. That's what it was all about. And they spent hours working this out. And for us now to decide that we're going to, without communicating, destroy it, since November 9th, 2016, when they've decided on the left that this was a deplorable president, that this was a president of the United States that had no business winning, that this was the president of the United States that shouldn't have been elected, that for all the reasons that they're throwing out there still, 3.5 years later, 258 days away from the election, they're still throwing it out there, and they're still angry about the fact that he won the election. And the polls were wrong. Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate. I think everybody in the world would tell you that she was a terrible candidate. And Donald Trump is able to relate to the common man, and they just can't understand that because they're so elite, so hi-fi up there in quasi-intellectual world, in their little ivory towers, that they don't understand that this is a guy that has got the ability to talk to the common man. The common man understands that person. Who else in the country has ever had those kinds of abilities? Well, FDR certainly had them. Truman had it to a degree. Eisenhower certainly had it to a degree. And those are the modern presidents that we can think back. Ronald Reagan certainly had the ability to communicate and communicate well. Well, President Trump knows how to communicate with the American people. And what President Trump says in his tweets, and what President Trump says most often, a lot of people in the press will say, oh, how dare he say that. But most of the things that he says, most people say in their homes. Most people are already talking at their kitchen tables about these things. And they're saying almost identically the same thing that he's talking about. That's what I mean by relatability. So the press and the elites can do all they want to be politically correct. You've got a president that sees things the way an awful lot of Americans see it. Now, the left coast and the east coast political elites don't see that at all because they go to their same parties. The political elites could care less about the fact that we right now have the lowest black unemployment in history, the lowest Latin unemployment in history, the lowest number of women in history. We've reduced the numbers. 1953 was the last time that we had this many women in the workplace. Okay, 1953. Can you imagine that? There are more women right now that are in the workplace having jobs than we've ever had. Unemployment right now is at 3.2%. That's a huge number. The stock market is out of sight. We have a new deal with the United States, Mexico, and Canada. That USMC is going to be worth 600,000 new jobs. So we are going to have a significant problem here in about 2 years, and that is that we're not going to have enough people to hire for the jobs that we have available. But we did that by deciding that we would stop having births in this nation. And we've done that by, one, convincing all of the American people to have less than 2 children. I think it's now, I don't know how they get this stat either, but we're having about 1.5 children. I don't know how you have a half child, but anyway, we're having about 1.5 child per family. And we are also aborting babies. And so if you take and you have a lower birth rate and a greater number of jobs, and you have an abortion rate that is almost identical with the number of jobs that are available, well then, we've caused our own problem. We need people that are with a sense of American free enterprise. We don't need people coming in from all over the world who have no clue what America's all about. Now, when they came in from the European nations and they come in legally, then they have to find out what America's all about in order to become an American citizen. That's the big problem too with the illegal Americans. The illegal immigrants that are coming in that want to become Americans are not taking the courses necessary to even understand what we're even all about. So if I come up out of some nation somewhere and the only government that I've ever known anything about is a socialistic, oppressive government, then when I'm talking politics with someone in America, what do you think is going to come out of my mouth? What's going to come out is what I know. And what I probably know if I'm coming up out of Guatemala or Honduras or some of the Central American nations, I've known dictatorships and I've known socialism. I'm not going to come forward and have any idea what it means to be involved in a democratic republic like America. And I don't have that history. So I haven't been to school, I haven't learned it, but I've got an opportunity because I'm here in America, but I'm in here illegally. And you talk to any of the immigrants in this nation today that are coming through the door the proper way, they're telling you that they're going to school. They love this country. They love the fact that they're learning about the country. They want to be Americans. They don't want to be illegal Americans, and they don't want, and they resent the fact that these folks are coming in from the back door and are being allowed to stay here. You can do the discussion with them anytime you'd like. You can find them here in Rutland. You can find legals, people that are coming into the country legally and are attempting to be here legally, and you can find those who are illegal right here in good old Rutland. So very interesting situation going on. We need to make sure that we, as American citizens, as Vermont citizens, as citizens of Rutland County and Rutland City, we need to be sure that we are discerning what is happening. And you've got to become, you just can't be indolent. And the word indolent, big word, means you just can't be lazy, okay? You've got to stop being lazy. You've got to get up off that couch, go out, read, go out and find out what's going on, get involved, make sure that you understand, and don't lockstep with anybody. Don't lockstep with Mike Lannon, the conservative. Don't lockstep with whoever is on the Democratic side. Decide for yourself. But whatever you do, when you make your decisions, make sure that you have good, solid, foundational facts. Just like the impeachment trial that's going on down in Washington, D.C. If people really listen carefully and don't just follow the bullet points that are being thrown around, you will find out that there has been no crime committed. And in order to be impeached, you're supposed to have a high crime and misdemeanor. You're supposed to have bribery and treason. None of that's gone on. Obstruction of Congress is not a crime. And it's supposed to be it's supposed to be three branches of government equal, and when executive privilege is claimed by all the presidents up to this one, you're supposed to go to court and find out if it's actually possible that he can have executive session, not being allowed to do it. So from my perspective, this is a very bad sham, very nasty time for the country, and it's not going to be repaired quickly. There's no way that the Democrats and the Republicans are going to see eye to eye with any part of the political process of this nation anytime soon. I don't see it coming down the road, and I've been around here a long, long time. So I'm just saying that I do not see us getting out of this hole. Usually when you're digging a hole and you find out that the hole isn't the right kind of hole, you stop shoveling. But no, not down in Washington. They just keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. So eventually what we should be doing is throwing the dirt in over their heads and getting them out of there. And that's what I would suggest here in Vermont. You've got to get these entrenched Democratic politicians out of the way. Get some new blood in there. That means the House and the Senate. And Bernie, they got to go. They've got to go. You've got to do the thinking about it. It can't be just me sitting in front of you on this television set telling you you've got to get up and you've got to make a concerted effort to say they have got to go. They've been down there long enough. And what have they done for you personally lately? Nothing. And that's the measuring stick. What have they done for Vermont recently that's of any great quality? Nothing. And you can see that. Just go down and check. Well, my time has come to an end. Believe it or not, it's the fast half hour. Talk as fast as I can. I hope you've enjoyed the show. See you next time. Bye now.